Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the graduation exercises of the School of Medicine's class of 1981. Will you please rise for the presentation of the colors by the Joint Armed Forces Color Guard and remain standing for the national anthem and the invocation. The invocation will be delivered by Ensign Conrad Hayashi of the graduating class.
We give thanks that we are able to further apply our developing talents. We appreciate the support we have been given and the experiences we have undergone, with hopes that they will enable us to practice with compassion the art as well as the science of medicine. We ask for stamina when we are fatigued, for bravery to take the steps which will advance medicine and humanity, and for strength to keep our convictions while being open to other ideas, so that we will have fidelity to the highest ideals of medicine and ethical conduct. And we hope that we will someday be able to justly view foreign places such as El Salvador, Cambodia, and the Middle East, as cornucopias of beauty and peace, rather than infernos of human suffering. Amen.
Retire the colors. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure for me to introduce the student officer who has been president of the class of 1981 for the entire 4 years of its existence. As his last official act in his present grade, Lieutenant Charles F. Longer will deliver the farewell of the class of 1981.
The class of 1981 welcomes all of you to this graduation ceremony today. We'd especially like to welcome our families and friends who've helped us to arrive at this point in our careers. We hope that these people will continue to stand by us in some very difficult years to come. We'd like to thank at this time the university faculty and administration for their interest in our education, also for their concern for us as individuals. We hope that as the classes in the school grow larger, this attention to the individual will not be lost. The 66 members of our class represent 56 undergraduate institutions from 29 states. Some of us have had no prior military experience. Others of us have had extensive experience. During our 4 years here at Uniformed Services University, these differences have faded, and we've developed close personal ties with our classmates. In this same way, our relationships are not bounded by the color of the uniforms that we wear. As we leave this university and start our service-specific medical careers, I hope these personal ties will remain strong and allow us to further facilitate inter-service cooperation in sharing ideas and resources. The place of our class in the growth of the university has been somewhat unique. We weren't in the public eye as the charter class before us, but we were nonetheless subjected to the stresses of a university in the throes of establishing itself. In spite of this unsettled environment, we successfully managed our studies, and many of us found time to participate in extra activities supporting the class or the university. I feel it appropriate to mention some of the individuals who I feel made especially noteworthy contributions during this time. First, Sabrina Benjamin managed our student note service and was chairperson of our graduation social committee and did a lot of work, and I think she should be recognized. Rosemary Greenberg and Greg Ray are two people who founded and edited our student newspaper, which is still going strong at this time. And Connie Mariano, who this year did an outstanding job as editor of our yearbook and saw to it that the yearbook was published and distributed. Some other individuals who I think should be mentioned now who worked very hard during our graduation week here were Julie Ducey, Bob Snyder, Frank Flannery, Dave Lesser, Larry Holm, Nancy Zeffo, and George Jubali. This spirit of involvement that these people represent enriches the institution, but it also benefits all the people in it. I can see that the underclassmen are participating as much or more than we have, and I hope that our class will continue to contribute to the organizations that, with which we associate in the future. One of the things which impressed me in my 4 years at USU was the desire of the faculty and administration to establish the best training program possible, and the responsiveness and spirit of cooperation they showed as they pursued this goal. This task, we realize, is not yet completed, and as the school grows, new problems will arise. I hope that the faculty and administration will retain the attitude they've shown in the past. However, no matter how well established the university becomes, it remains the responsibility of the students to continually reevaluate their educational program and the policies of the school, and to offer constructive criticism and suggestions, and to participate as much as possible in the process of maintaining the Uniformed Services University as a dynamic institution. I feel that the class of 1981 has met its duty in this respect, and I hope that the classes after us will continue to respond to this challenge. Thank you. Now my classmate, Bob Snyder, will share his reflections on his 4 years at the Uniformed Services University.
Thank you, Charlie. Distinguished visitors, faculty, parents, spouses, and fellow classmates. Well, we finally made it. What can you say about 66 new doctors? That after 20 years of reading, being lectured to, studying, and testing, we finally got some respect. The past 4 years have certainly been filled with ups and downs, with the thrills of victory as we advanced forward each year, and alas, the agonies of defeat as we coped with biochemistry, neuroanatomy, and other forms of cruel and unusual punishment. And to think that all our experiences were almost stashed on a whim before we ever got started. To those individuals who foresaw the need, sacrificed their time and effort, and realized a dream down to the final brick in this university, we can truly say that we would not be standing here today but for your efforts, and we sincerely thank you. We are doctors now, but who can forget our arrival and initiation to the profession? We were 66 obsessive-compulsive, eager Type A individuals, each harboring some doubts about the 4 years ahead. Let's return for a moment to those glorious days in the beginning. Who can forget getting off Bus 1 and Bus 2 at Fort Meade while Charlie tried to form and march a mob who thought left and right face was probably an introductory lecture in anatomy? Can anyone forget the picture of consternation on Nancy's face as she cleaned her M16 rifle after the firing range and was perhaps thinking of her friends at Berkeley and wondering if they could see me now? And then there were academics, lecture, and more lectures. Labs, quizzes, practicals, and tests. And always I'll remember Fred's arm flying up to ask a question, sir. The classroom developed a personality all its own, from the attentive front row to those renowned individuals who resided in the ignominy of the last row. Some students came to class all the time, others made only guest appearances, and still others arrived on occasion dressed in trench coats and other disguises. In the early gloomy periods, Ron Blank would gather us and, like a football coach at halftime, revitalize and instill in us the strength to go on and remind us that our class was not a control group for the charter martyrs. We were introduced to clinical medicine and became human guinea pigs to palpate, auscultate, examine, and practice physical exams on. A few even had the experience of a free prostate exam, while others wrote 5,000-word papers to pay their penance. And junior year was a blur, as all went their separate ways to see what hospitals were really like. The term scut puppy was born. By fourth year, some felt they had grown into pedigreed scut dogs. And senior year, we gathered to renew and relive the past 3 years. No one will ever forget Camp Bullis. 50 years from now, some will still have nightmares and dream that the dean is behind every tree with a canister of tear gas, and that Barry Wolcott is there with an algorithm on how to throw it. Yes, we've come a long way, but what about the future? The future now looms on the horizon like an unexplored land. Up until now, the edge of the world was graduation from medical school. Internships and even residencies will come to pass. 20 years from now, where will we be? Because many will remain in the uniformed service, our school is unique. We can even follow each other's careers by reading the Army, Air Force, or Navy Times. Some will pursue different goals, both in the service and out of it. Years from now, some of the class assembled here will be in positions to formulate health policy. Others will pursue teaching or research goals. Others will never lose their love for clinical medicine. Let's look into the crystal ball. Maybe Wendy will be the Army Surgeon General. Frank may be practicing legal medicine and won't have aged a day. I can see Fred paddling up the Amazon with his black bag and medicines. Mike will still be trying to learn to fly. Ed, the new president of Panama. Myron is a general practitioner back in Arkansas. Edgar, the professional guest lecturer. Rudy, TDY, around the world. Dennis still sailing with the fleet, and Hank surpassing Omar Bradley's record for continuous active duty. Dave Lesser is a medical officer on the Love Boat. Al is a famous orthopedist in Long Island. Dave, MD, PhD, practicing physical theoretical pediatrics. And Walt, still asking the question everybody else was only thinking. Dave Goldberg and George Fuller as world-famous pediatricians. Charlie, the commander of Walter Reed. Kevin, celebrating his 30th birthday. And as for myself, maybe the team physician for the Dallas Cowboys. My message is simply to go forth. Pursue your medical goals. Do the best you can and enjoy your careers. Our school is unique. So, keep and treasure your friendships of 4 years. Call upon your friends often for advice and to share experiences. In our large, bewildering, often confusing medical system, treat your patients with compassion and respect. We live in a constantly changing world. History often repeats itself. If it be our calling, I am confident we will be prepared. So go forward, doctors. Hold your heads high. In our own way, we each have a rendezvous with destiny. Congratulations and good luck forever. Thank you.
Charlie, Bob, thank you very much. This time it is my pleasure to introduce the Honorable David Packard, Chairman of our Board of Regents, Acting President, who will present 3 awards. The first of these, the Board of Regents, Association of Military Surgeons of the United States Combined Award, subsequently the William P. Clements Award, and the award for our Outstanding Civilian Educator. Lieutenant Rosemary Greenberg, would you please come forward? The Board of Regents Award is the highest honor a graduating senior can receive. The recipient has a superior academic performance and has shown a concern and care for patients, the investment in the social and intellectual aspects of medicine, the devotion, empathy, dedication, and personal commitment required of a physician. She has proven her capability for hard work, both as an individual and as a team member, and she has performed at the highest levels of duty and honor expected of a commissioned officer. The Board of Regents, with pride in her accomplishments and confidence for an outstanding career, is pleased to make its 1981 award to Lieutenant Rosemary Greenberg, United States Air Force. The Association of Military Surgeons of the United States has established an award to be given annually to a graduate of the Uniformed Services University School of Medicine. The award consists of a check for $500, a lifetime membership in the association, and a plaque. This year, the Association of Military Surgeons Award is co-awarded with the Board of Regents Award to Lieutenant Rosemary Greenberg. The William P. Clements Award is given annually at each of the service academies to that uniformed faculty member chosen by the students as its best teacher. The award, donated privately, bears the name of a public servant, now governor of the state of Texas, who during his tenure as Deputy Secretary of Defense had a keen interest in the education of those who serve the nation. Lieutenant Colonel Patrick Duff was chosen this year's recipient of the Clements Award as the uniformed faculty instructor whose personal example and performance best characterized the principle of excellence in education. Colonel Duff has consistently sought to inspire students to high levels of academic accomplishment in his role as coordinator of the medical student clerkship and electives in obstetrics and gynecology at the Walter Reed Army Medical Center. He is the first clinician assigned to a teaching hospital to receive the Clements Award. Lieutenant Colonel Duff, the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences takes pleasure in endorsing the decision of its students by bestowing upon Lieutenant Colonel Patrick Duff, Medical Corps, United States Army, the William P. Clements Award. The citation reads, "You are a physician who combines professional skill with integrity, compassion, and respect for the patient. You have by your conduct and teaching, led your students to aspire to these same qualities. Your selection assures you of an honored place in the university's traditions of academic excellence and devotion to the nation's service." Thank you. The third award is the Uniformed Services University of the Health Science Outstanding Civilian Educator Award. The Board of Regents takes pleasure in presenting its first Civilian Faculty Award for Excellence in Education to Malcolm B. Carpenter, MD, Professor and Chairman, Department of Anatomy. An acknowledged leader in neurology and neuroanatomy, he continues to challenge and inspire his students to reach for excellence. His stimulating lectures are complemented by his ability to individual students for counsel, direction, and friendly encouragement. Dr. Carpenter's wide-ranging scholarly interests have broadly influenced this university, but it is his warm personal relationships with students which have led to his selection. The student's nomination concludes with the following words, and I quote, "Dr. Carpenter, the students give you this award with great pleasure and respect. We are sure that future recipients will be honored to share the Civilian Faculty Award for Excellence in Education with you." Congratulations. At this time, it is my privilege to introduce the Honorable Melvin R. Laird as Speaker at this, our second commencement. Mr. Laird is known to all as a former member of the House of Representatives from the 7th Congressional District in the state of Wisconsin, which he served for 8 consecutive terms, and as Secretary of Defense during the previous Republican administration. Less well known to most is the instrumental role which Mr. Laird had in catalyzing the golden era in the development of biomedical science and in medicine in the United States following World War II. Through a lifelong close association with Dr. Tony Carreri, the university's first president, as a congressman, Mr. Laird recognized that major accomplishments could be achieved in the treatment and prevention of disease if the energies of the bioscience community were allowed to be applied to problems such as those of infection, heart disease, and cancer. Through his insight, his administrative and legislative abilities, programs were initiated which encouraged first the training of scientists, then the support of their efforts, and finally the translation of these efforts and knowledges into patient care. With Congressman Fogarty, Senator Hill, Mr. Laird was a congressional leader in the war against biomedical ignorance. For these activities, Mr. Laird received the Albert Lasker Award for his contributions to health research and medicine. With the establishment of the Uniformed Services University in 1972, Secretary of Defense Laird was pivotal in translating Public Law 92-426 from ink on pieces of paper to this institution, which has met its goals on schedule and within budget. Mr. Laird convinced Mr. Packard, who had been his Deputy Secretary of Defense, that he, Mr. Packard, should accept the chairmanship of our Board of Regents. It is this Board of Regents which has made today possible for all of us. Mr. Laird served in the Navy from 1942 to 1946, has received many honors and awards, including the Medal of Freedom, our nation's highest honor to a civilian, in 1974. He is currently Senior Counselor for National and International Affairs at Reader's Digest. On behalf of the class of 1981, the faculty and staff of USU, allow me to present the Honorable Melvin R. Laird.
Thank you very much. Members of the class of 1981, Board of Regents, President Packard, distinguished guests and friends. First, I congratulate the class of 1981 on their achievement today. But I'd have to disagree with the president of that class somewhat that merely upon graduation, respect is automatic. I don't think that's true. I'd like to tell you a little story about my 9th campaign for the Congress of the United States. I was campaigning in the little community of Montello, Wisconsin, up and down the main street, shaking hands, asking people to vote for me for Congress in the November election. And I ran across a rugged-looking farmer on that street, and I put my hand out to shake hands with him. And I said, "I'm Mel Laird. I want your vote for Congress next Tuesday." And mind you, this was the 9th term I was running for in the Congress from that district. And he looked me straight in the eye and he said, "Young man, you've got my vote. The guy we got in there now is no good." I thought that I had gained a great deal of respect through those years of service in that congressional district. And I want to tell this graduating class, their task has just begun. I would like to pay my respects to not only the chairman of your Board of Regents, because he has served so well, and without him and his work in the Congress, and the other members of the Board of Regents, including my former colleague, Doc Hall, who I see here today, this institution would not have had the success that it has had and the support that it's had in the Congress of the United States. I well remember in 1963 when Eddie Hebert came to talk with the House Defense Appropriations Committee, on which I happened to be the ranking minority, and set forth this idea that he had for this great school. And there was substantial opposition to the establishment of this school because there were many in the Congress of the United States that said that medical services, that doctors in particular, would be easy to get because we had a long background of individuals that had been deferred under the selective service system, and that we could call upon them for many years to come up into the latter part of the 1980s because of the agreements that they had signed under their deferments in the draft. That there was no need in the OMB and the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare and all the major agencies of the executive branch of the government wrote letters in opposition to that bill and continued their opposition until the bill was finally passed after a tremendous effort on the part of this member of Congress from Louisiana. And so in 1982, when that bill was passed that makes this second graduating class a possibility today, over the opposition of the various departments and the Office of Management and Budget, there were some that even after the signing of the legislation and the establishment of the school kept up their opposition. But it was the Board of Regents of this particular school that kept the pressure on and did the kind of work that was needed and necessary in order to see that this became a reality. People are the most important asset that any military establishment has, that any defense effort has, and people, not hardware, are the most important asset of the Department of Defense, the Forest Services, and the Public Health Service today. These graduates today will go forward to help in maintaining the health of military families, of military officers, enlisted personnel all over the world. And their opportunities are endless in improving and protecting the health of our military deterrent. Their rewards will be great, but they will face great difficulties. We are in a position in the United States where our military budget, 59% of it today in the 1982 budget, will be devoted to people, to personnel, to labor costs in the Department of Defense. And this is as it should be. The Soviet budget, only 20% of its budget will be devoted to people, to health, to wages, and to labor costs. Theirs is a closed society, and every individual serving, whether it be in the health fields in the military or in the health field in the civilian economy, is working on the basis of conscript labor. And their cost in their military budget, as you project them for the next 5 years, will run between 18 and 22% of their total defense effort. And our costs will run in our budget between 58 and 62% of our military budget, giving the Soviet Union the opportunity to spend some 80% of their budget on modernization, on weapons, on ships, on tanks, and on the weapons of war, on research and development. Whereas in the United States, we will be spending some 40% of our defense budget on modernization, research and development, and the other items not related to people. For 20 years, these young men and women have been receiving formal education. And in those 20 years, a lot has happened to America. And it started happening to America in 1962, as these young men and women were starting their formal education. In 1962, the President of the United States, then John F. Kennedy, faced one of the greatest challenges any president has faced in this century, and that was the Cuban Missile Challenge. And many of you will recall, and in that year, 1962, he called the then ambassador to the United Nations from the Soviet Union to the Oval Office. And it was Gromyko, Ambassador Gromyko. And he asked Ambassador Gromyko 3 questions at that meeting in the Oval Office. He said, "Has the Soviet Union placed any missiles in Cuba?" And Gromyko said no. The second question was, "Are there any military personnel inserted into Cuba to train Cuban military personnel in the operation of missiles or offensive weapon systems?" And the answer from Ambassador Gromyko was no. And the third question President Kennedy addressed to Ambassador Gromyko at that time: did the Soviet Union, through any third country or in any way, introduce any offensive missiles on Cuban territory? And Gromyko's answer was no. With that, in the Oval Office, the President of the United States pulled out the desk drawer and threw across the desk at Ambassador Gromyko the U-2 photos, showing beyond any question of a doubt that Soviet missiles had been introduced in Cuba. And he gave them to Gromyko, and Gromyko left the Oval Office a condemned liar. But Gromyko went back to the Soviet Union, and from that day forward, a decision was made by the highest level of governmental officials in the Soviet Union that never again would the Soviet Union be placed in a position where it had to back down in a confrontation of any kind with the United States of America. And the build-up started in 1964, and it has continued so that in the last 4 years, the Soviet Union has been spending some $50 billion more on offensive and defensive weapon systems, on research and development, on ships, aircraft, and tanks than has the United States. That year, 1962, was a very important year for another reason, because another important decision was made by the administration, and that decision had an adverse effect. The Cuban Missile decision had a positive effect as far as the United States was concerned, but the other decision made in 1962 had a negative effect upon the course of these last 20 years, as these young men and women have been going through their formal education to become doctors. And that decision was to change the role of the American military advisor in Southeast Asia from a role of military advisors to combat soldier. And it was the opposite decision that had been made by President Eisenhower just some 4 years earlier, in which he said, "We will never become involved in a land war in Southeast Asia." In 1962, another decision was made. And for the next 6 years, the American ground combat role became a massive role in Southeast Asia. And we went from some 1,000 military combat forces within a short period of 6 years to over 550,000 combat forces on the ground in Southeast Asia. And during that period of time, a decision was made to fight now and finance later. $10 billion worth of supplies were taken out of Europe and transferred to Southeast Asia without any replacements. Spare parts were robbed from the Air Force, the Navy, the Army all over the world, and transferred so that it was not necessary to go to the Congress of the United States for appropriations during that very difficult period. And that had an adverse effect on the military posture of the United States at the same time the Soviet Union was moving forward to build up a deep water navy and to build up their capabilities throughout the world. And during this period from 1962 to 1981, the balance of power has changed. And as we face the period of 1963 to 1967, the United States will not be in a superior military posture and will not be able to give the military deterrent, the realistic deterrent that is needed and necessary in order to preserve peace. And that's why it's necessary as these young men and women enter their new roles as doctors of our armed forces, that this critical period of taking care of people becomes so important. Because we must convince the world that the United States does care about freedom, is interested in preserving the peace, and the only manner in which we can do that is to convince first ourselves and then the world that we will make the necessary sacrifices to have a strong defense, realistic deterrent to promote and to preserve peace in the period of the 1980s. And if we can convince not only ourselves but the rest of the world, then and only then will we be able to move into a period of real arms reductions between the NATO and the Warsaw Pact. Unless we can convince the world that we are willing to make those kinds of sacrifices, are willing to pay the cost of personnel, willing to realize that in the United States we're never going to have conscript labor, and by merely having a draft, you're not going to be able to reduce the costs of military personnel. Many people are looking for a quick fix, and they think the way to reduce the defense budget is to go to some sort of new system where you have the opportunity to conscript people, not only for first terms, but second, third, and fourth terms, because we don't have the real problem in the first term enlistees. Our real problem is the second, third, and fourth termers, the trained people that are needed and necessary. The American people have made an investment in each one of these men and women today of some $400,000 apiece as far as the taxpayer is concerned. To train a jet pilot today, it costs $750,000 to $800,000 for the training of each jet pilot. It only seems cost-effective to me to establish the kind of incentive system that is needed and necessary so that in the next 10 or 15 years, this class will be providing the Surgeon Generals of the United States, not only of the three services, but of the Public Health Service. But they will be the real leaders in promoting better health care, not only for the military, but for all of our people. Thank you very much.
Mr. Laird, I know I speak for the graduating class, faculty, staff, and everyone here in thanking you for those words. Mr. Packard, on behalf of the faculty of the School of Medicine, I recommend to you the degree of Doctor of Medicine be conferred on 66 members and the degree of Master of Science on 1 member of the 1981 graduating class. Will the candidates please rise?
Well, I would like to say an informal word first and say that those of us who have been working for all of these years as members of the Board of Regents are very proud to finally see the results of these years of work come to fruition in terms of the wonderful group of people in this graduating class this year. And it really is a great pleasure for me to welcome you and a great pleasure for me to authorize, by virtue of the authority invested in the Board of Regents by the Congress of the United States, and upon the recommendation of the faculty and the dean, that I hereby confer the degree of Doctor of Medicine and the degree of Master of Science, with its attendant privileges and responsibilities. We will now present the diplomas.
Ensign Myron David Almond. Ensign Gerald Walter Anderson. Second Lieutenant Naomi Elspeth Aronson. Second Lieutenant Sabrina A. Benjamin. Second Lieutenant Wendy Beth Bernstein. Ensign Paul Robert Biggs. Second Lieutenant Donald Matthew Bradshaw. Ensign Thomas David Kastner. Second Lieutenant Alan William Christensen. Second Lieutenant Walter C. Connor. Ensign Edgar R. Cordovan. Second Lieutenant Mary Lynn Daly. Second Lieutenant Joseph A. Deering. Second Lieutenant Julie Ducey. Ensign John Howard Edmonds. Ensign Richard Bruce Ellis. Ensign Michael William Falgren. Ensign Daniel Edward Faircloth. Second Lieutenant Douglas Keith Fernandez. Second Lieutenant Frank Travers Flannery. Second Lieutenant Charles William Fox, Jr. Second Lieutenant Kenneth James Franklin. Second Lieutenant George Frederick Fuller. Second Lieutenant George Joseph Jabali. Second Lieutenant David William Getz. Second Lieutenant David I. Goldberg. Second Lieutenant Daniel Joseph Greenberg. Second Lieutenant Rosemary Tirananzi Greenberg. Ensign Frank Wesley Hall. Ensign Martha Lorraine Hauk. Ensign Conrad Edmund Hayashi. Ensign Lawrence Martin Holm. Second Lieutenant David Bruce Jack. Ensign Catherine Lee Johnson. Second Lieutenant Kevin Newell Keenan. Ensign William James Kimmer. Second Lieutenant Diane Claire Lacey. Ensign Harold Bransford Lamb, Jr. Ensign Lawrence Frederick Lassen. Second Lieutenant John David Lesser, II. Ensign Scott R. Lillibridge. Second Lieutenant Michael William Leeschak. Second Lieutenant Charles F. Longer. Ensign Ismael Padilla Lopez. Ensign Eleanor Concepcion Mariano. Second Lieutenant William Frederick McFadden. Second Lieutenant Gerhard Moeller. Ensign Mitchell Gene Moffett. Second Lieutenant Garrison V. Morin. Second Lieutenant Edwin Albert Murdoch. Second Lieutenant Ann Elizabeth Norwood. Second Lieutenant Mary Ann O'Hara. Ensign Ivan Y. Peacock. Ensign Richard Frank Pieck. Second Lieutenant Gregory T. Ray. Second Lieutenant Rudolph R. Roth. Second Lieutenant George P. Shaughness. Second Lieutenant Robert James Snyder. Second Lieutenant Linda Louise Strand. Second Lieutenant Patrick J. Strollo, Jr. Ensign David Stewart Wade. Ensign Susan Jennifer Walker. Second Lieutenant Lawrence Ty Weston. Ensign Dennis Alonzo Wilson. Second Lieutenant John Samuel Young III. Second Lieutenant Nancy Zeffo. And Miss Susan Beth Marcus.